Welcome to Libation Domination, the digital marketing and e-commerce podcast for the wine and spirits industry. Diving into real-world digital strategies that connect you to your customers and actually make money. And now, here's your hosts, Shem Swerkes and Justin Noland.
Welcome back to Libation Domination. And today we're talking about the top 10 digital marketing trends for 2021. Top 10. You're here with your hosts, myself, Shem Swerkes, and Justin Noland. And this is going to be more of an overview type show. So we're going to talk high level about these 10 things. Otherwise, we would be here for days, probably call this a boot camp or something, get into this. We'll get into each subject in a little more detail in future episodes. But Justin, how are you feeling about 2021?
2021 is off to a 2020 kind of start. That being said, optimistic, super positive. I think we're going in the right direction on so many things. I think people are starting to feel better. They're starting to feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Some people are rushing to that end of the tunnel, maybe a little faster than necessary. But at the same time, I'm not going to put anything down. It's super positive. Everybody's feeling good. I am excited for this summer. I'm excited for what the wine industry might be able to do in bringing back so many people out to their properties. I'm just excited in general. I think everything's going in the right direction, and people are starting to feel much more optimistic about where we're going.
Yes, me too. I can't wait to have some warmer, sunny weather. I mean, we're in California, so let's be honest, we're pretty spoiled when it comes to weather. But just being able to walk outside and feel the sun on the skin is something that I'm going to really enjoy. And to be able to kick back at a tasting room, probably not in the room, but outdoors, and just enjoy some wine will be really nice. And I just want to, before we kind of get into the meat of these things here, it just popped in my head, and I want to share this real quick. And Justin, maybe get you to touch on this for a second, is One Brick Wine. So that's something that we just launched. And if you want to see a lot of these digital marketing trends being implemented at a very effective level, then onebrickwine.com is somewhere you can go and see what's happening with Jana Kramer releasing her wine. Can you speak a little bit on that, Justin?
Yeah, so partnering with Jana Kramer to release an entire new brand, an entire new line of wines has been special. It's just been a lot of fun. She is truly what you would want out of a celebrity partner, in so many different ways. From being humble and being super easy to work with, and really loving wine and starting with a passion for wine. But it allows us to really focus in on all of the different aspects of digital marketing, because she's willing to support creating content. She's willing to, she is a core influencer as it relates to, the social media and creating community, and everything about her is authentic. I mean, authentic almost to a point of like, wow, that's TMI, but that's who she is. And it's just been a blast. It's been a blast connecting with her community. It's been a blast getting that wine out and seeing what a massive success it is, and even launching the Brick House Wine Club. I mean, we've been just having so much fun with it. I encourage everybody to check it out, because this is a really cool brand, really great wine at approachable prices.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that she knows her consumer so well. She knows her audience, she knows her fans, which really has helped us to really develop those audiences, like in Facebook audiences, and really develop the language, like the language that you've built in creating this brand really focuses on a lot of things that you've learned from her, which that's so important, because, we know that being, creating a wine brand, you can't just go after people that like wine. You really have to know who your audience is. So let's start with the first one here. And these are in no particular order, although I do think for me, the first one is probably one of the most important, and it's kind of an old one that's been around for a long time. And I think a lot of brands, especially in the wine industry, kind of lose sight with how important this is. And that's email marketing.
Yeah, so I've been hearing, and again, I've heard this a few different times. Even my friend Paul Mabry talked about it at a recent speech that we're actually giving together to a good list of winery CEOs, where retention is the new acquisition, and it goes way further into that. But a lot of what that meant is if you already have people that are already giving you information, that are already buying products from you, the best way that you can continue to increase your sales and continue to lifetime value is having a relationship with them. And that's all. That's what email marketing is all about, right? And there's so much value that you can bring to those consumers. There's so much value, and there's so much that they can do for you. And it's all about building that relationship and continuing it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it was at one time thought, like I would hear people say this and it just blew my mind that, well, email, we want to reach a younger crowd. Millennials don't have email addresses. They don't do email. But really, as I fix my camera here.
I was going to say, what happened? There you go.
The thing is, millennials, they grew up, they got jobs, they got emails, and anyone with disposable income typically has an email address, and they actually check their emails. And it really is the only way to have a direct relationship with your consumer. And in this day and age, when so many are focused on platforms that you're kind of at the will of the platform that you're advertising on, email is one of the few things you have left where you own your data. That's your audience, and you can have that direct connection with them.
Yeah, and this isn't a knock on stuff like SMS. I mean, there's communications channels that are awesome and you can do a lot with. Email is just so consistent, and the people, and again, maybe this comes across rude, but I feel like the people that are saying we don't get return on email, we don't, email, nobody opens our emails. Maybe look at what you're emailing those people. Maybe you should be driving a little bit more value in those emails. I feel like the people that aren't getting value out of email are the people that are probably doing it wrong in the first place.
Yeah, if you're not converting sales off of email, and actually if it's not your number one converting, like highest conversion rate and probably number one revenue channel, either it's one of three things. Either you're just starting and you haven't built that list yet. Or maybe you have a really successful email list, but you just really have a lot of money invested in new traffic and new customers. So it isn't, but most of the time it's because you're just not doing it right. So number two, let's go on to content marketing. What do you think here about content marketing, Justin?
Yeah, so people want to be entertained, right? Like it always makes me think of that. A whole scene in the movie Gladiator, and he's like, "Oh, you're not entertained." And it's and entertainment can come in so many different forms. It can come in true, entertainment as it relates to like being comedic or being like telling a really cool story. But it can also be education and a variety of other things. So creating content and developing content and something that can be digested and enjoyed by the consumer is truly what drives so much value, to a brand, so much value to a website, and it's kind of I would say it's really the key to SEO, and not just from a standpoint of you can load it up with all of your keywords and all that kind of stuff, but it's about, does somebody click through, find something and say, yep, that's what I wanted. That's the kind of thing. That's what I'm getting value out of. And algorithms are sophisticated enough now to understand if the person doing the search is finding value out of that end piece. And then, obviously there's so many other components that go to it, but content isn't just king. Content is queen, jack, everybody else in the royal court.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly, especially video. Nowadays, video, it's been around for a while, and it kind of sounds like a broken record to say that you need to be doing video. The truth is that content is it's difficult. And it takes time to create, it takes some thought, and it takes time to see returns on it. Doing a blog, doing a YouTube channel, all these different pieces where you're putting content out into the world, even with value content, the return on traffic or the return, the return on the investment is not necessarily going to be commensurate to the value of the content in the beginning, because it takes time. And if you haven't consistently done content for at least 6 months, you can't even judge what direction it's going. But it is one of those things that a content piece you did 3 years ago can still be showing returns now. I have a YouTube channel that I've barely touched, that I did a lot with at one time, that I still get 1,500 views a month on it, just from the videos that I have from 5 years ago. They're still getting views, and it's a channel that I don't do anything with. So it's one of those long processes. You have to be in it for the long haul.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in it for the long haul, but also being thoughtful about how you utilize that content, right? It's not just let me put the blog up and hope people come to my blog. It's, okay, I have a cool blog up that has a great video in it. What are all of the other aspects, all of the other channels that I can then utilize that content across? It may need to be resized. It may need to be, kind of refocused or cut differently so that it fits in, the Instagram's vertical format for stories or something along those lines. But I think you're right in that it's both this big, this long-term, can I just continue to build up an encyclopedia of content that will support, what we're doing for years and years to come. But it's also just really being thoughtful about, like, hey, this is one piece of content. Can I use it 50 different ways to ensure that we're getting a really strong return out of it?
Yeah, we're going to have to talk in depth on this one in another episode, because this is such a great topic. But moving on to number 3, let's talk influencer marketing.
Yeah, so I love this topic, and I think this is another one where I could probably talk for just literally hours and hours and hours on end. And most people think about influencer marketing, especially as it relates to the wine industry, as like just people taking pictures of themselves with a bottle of wine and posting it on Instagram. And there's so many other things that you can do with it. There's so many other ways that you can do with it that have zero to do with wine, but will help drive communities and help tell your brand story and get into it. And that's not necessarily like, oh, let's jump onto the newest platform, or, oh, let's do this, right? Like, there's always this joke of, I couldn't connect with people on Facebook. We can't connect with people on Instagram. We can't connect with people on Twitter. So let's try this one instead. TikTok's going to be our thing. And, while it may work out, it probably won't. But there are really great ways to reach audiences in unique and authentic and kind of fun ways to tell your story that get beyond the, bottle shots, to a wine Instagrammer. And I think influencer marketing, it's been around a long, long time. So this isn't anything new. We're just getting new platforms and new channels and being able to dissect it down into much smaller audiences that can be really important. But at the same time, it's the same thing that's been done for 50 years. It's really no different than getting celebrity endorsements. It's just our celebrities have clearer, authentic connections with their audiences, and you can work with them on the kinds of content that they're creating and bring value to your own audience as well. So there's just a lot more kind of fun things that you can do. I think this is going to continue to get bigger as it becomes more and more difficult to work with a platform, and becomes more and more difficult and more expensive to create ads and do things like that. That influencer marketing is going to be key.
Well, it's taking that concept of word of mouth where somebody's making a recommendation. And in fact, if you go to a wine influencer, somebody who puts themselves out there, that's their thing as a wine influencer, you'll see just picture after picture of them with different wines that they're talking about, because wineries are actually sending them wine to try and talk about, because they have a following around wine. But maybe what another question might be as well, so we know wineries are doing this, is how are you encouraging your customers who are buying your wine to also be influencers?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, and then that's where it comes down to like thinking about influencers differently. You know, your customers can be influencers, your employees absolutely can be influencers. And you know, thinking about, you know, the size of an audience. If somebody can truly influence a purchase decision, which is what influencing is all about, then they're an influencer and they're part of your tribe that you want to continue to grow and continue to build out, whether they have, you know, 20 or 30 people following them closely, or, you know, they've got 1 million. You know, there's value in all of it, and just being thoughtful in how you approach it can make all the difference.
And I feel like that ties directly into number 5, talking about communities.
Communities is so, you know, everybody.
Number 4. Let me try that again. That ties directly into number 4, which is communities.
Communities is a really cool topic, and I think a lot of people started seeing commercials during, you know, the holidays, coming from stuff like Facebook, where they were talking about their groups and how they're connecting people around very specific affinities. Like, we're a kazoo group that we all play the kazoo and we love the kazoo. But as this data grows and as people grow and kind of self-identify into groups of people, into these really cool communities, it creates opportunity for brands that have aligned purpose to join those communities and to regularly post in those communities and to be thoughtful about how they interact with them. And that's one way where organic content can still be a really valuable thing, because it's become less and less valuable on you know, when on your brand page and you're just kind of posting it out there. But if you can engage with communities online, already knowing kind of what they're all connected with together, that can be really powerful.
And if you can create a community, that's one that's extremely powerful. If you can create a community where you are the hub, but it can't be a community like we're this brand of wine community. It has to be a community that really delivers value to the consumer about something that they're really interested in, that niches down in something where everybody is coming together around that niche. And, oh, this brand is providing that platform.
Yeah, as a great example, you know, we were talking about One Brick Wines and Jana Kramer, and obviously there are lots of fans of hers from her One Tree Hill days. There's lots of fans of hers from her country music days, but she's really built a really authentic and strong community around the idea that marriage is hard, right? And that relationships take work and they take effort. And a lot of people can connect with that message and can connect with those things, so that when we're talking about, you know, like even experiences that we have, a lot of the experiences that we have are not necessarily about the wine. We're all enjoying the wine together and it's cheers and, you know, it's really great, but it's connecting on a deeper level that's part of that community. And I see that as a prime opportunity for so many brands.
Yeah. Marriage is hard. And I will say, if you're going to, you know, oftentimes getting a customer is compared to a marriage. And this thought just popped in my head. Except for the difference is a marriage takes work of 2 people. Whereas when you get your customer, most of the work needs to be on your end. So if you're not working hard to keep your customer, then something's going on. So number 5 now. And I feel like this is one that really shouldn't necessarily be a trend, but just the situation we find ourselves in, where the wine industry is catching up with digital, where we're catching up as an industry with being online, is data-driven marketing. Yeah.
So I'll give not necessarily give the wine industry credit on this, but take a broader look and say, look at what 2020 gave us, right? 2020 took away opportunities to go to trade shows and have trade show booths and do a lot more in-person sales visits. And, you know, you take that across virtually every industry. And I think from a marketing perspective, a lot of the executives looking at those decisions and saying, okay, did it actually hurt us? Are looking at the ROI and looking at their actual returns in the same way that they look at digital. So they're starting to look at all of their other branding kind of things and saying, okay, branding messages were powerful during that time period because it was a true affinity with the brand and we felt brand loyalty. So we're understanding the data behind some of the stuff that we never really thought that data was all that useful for. Everybody knows data is incredibly useful as it relates to e-commerce, but it became more and more important in how does data apply to our everyday interactions with our customers or our retailers. And the cat's out of the bag, like especially wine, and like that's it. Like everybody is starting to realize and has really gotten it that we need to understand how we're effectively using our dollar spend, how we're effectively using our personnel, how we're effectively doing everything, especially as it relates to marketing, but even across all of the other pieces. And that's what being data driven is all about. It's not necessarily that, you know, a particular KPI is like, nope, that's the end all be all of everything we do. But it's looking at the whole picture and saying, okay, this tells us a story and helps give us a pathway, or at least gives us some of the answers. You know, we've certainly seen in industry reports that not enough wineries have data analysts. But I think even as regular marketers, as regular operations people, we're starting to look at data differently.
Yeah, and I think you really hit the nail on the head when you talk about not just focusing on one KPI, but understanding it really as a whole. And this is key because, you know, looking at one piece of data, it can lie to you sometimes. It can tell you a story that's not entirely true. And especially in e-com, where we start having different platforms that we work with, even within, you know, you could have a Shopify platform as your backend that's uncoupled to like a Shogun front end, or maybe you have Wine Direct on the back end and you have something else running the front end. And then you have these different systems that tie in to the back end with APIs. And so now you have things happening on different levels. Sometimes you need multiple sets of data just to know that they're working. And then beyond that, to understand the customer journey, to understand your campaigns and how they're performing, you really need to bring it all together, the full picture. Thank you for listening to part 1 of Top 10 Digital Marketing Trends for the Wine Industry in 2021. Be sure to join us next week for part 2.
Thanks for joining us on Libation Domination, the digital marketing and e-commerce podcast for the wine and spirits industry. Make sure to visit our website at libationdomination.com and subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode. We're here for you with real-world digital strategies that connect you to your customers and actually make money.